Get ready to dive into the comic book realm, where heroes rise and villains take the helm. We're here to dissect the stories and the art. Our source material, we tear the panels apart.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Source Material Comics Podcast. We are live and direct. Mark Rowlett, you've come back with a trilogy of books that we're going to be discussing. I want you to tell our listeners what we are going to be talking about, and if there was any rhyme or reason as to why.
Well, you and I talked last year about doing this. I told you I bought the Cobra Commander book, and I was like, okay, if we don't review it, I'm not going to end up reading it. So this episode, tonight's episode, Cobra Commander, Darth Maul, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Shredder, and Hell, is the beginning of our longest series yet. It is a 1.5 long series of what's on Mark's shelf.
I see. All right.
So that's what we're doing. I wanted to do Cobra Commander, and then we're like, well, should we do G.I. Joe? And they're like, well, we had also done the Darth Vader series, and I talked about I'd always wanted to read the Cullen Bunn Darth Maul. And then you, because secretly you don't like me, had suggested Shredder and Hell. And I thought, well, what are
I do remember going, hey, I want to read this.
Right. So we're like, okay, well, let's kick the year off with something light and fun, because we tend to deal with some really heady, independent stuff on here. Like G.I. Joe, Star Wars, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, 3 of the most prominent children's intellectual properties over the last 50 years. So I got the books. That's what we're going to talk about. Cobra Commander by Joshua Williams and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Heroes in a Half Shell, Shredder and Hell.
Yeah, okay, all right. Yeah, I mean, that's the first thing I noticed was that we got 3 properties here. As a kid, I'm a big G.I. Joe fan. Also a kid, I'm a big Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan. And I've always appreciated the Star Wars franchise. So, and this is Darth Maul we're talking. So we're gonna what kind of stories could they tell? Because that to me is one of the more mysterious characters. So we'll talk about that when we get to it. But let's start with Cobra Commander, written by Joshua Williamson, art by Andrea Milana, and then colored by Annalisa Leone, lettered by Russ Wooten. This was 5 issues that released in 2024. So this is a pretty present comic here we're talking. And this is taking place in the Energon Universe. Cobra Commander, always a dastardly G.I. Joe villain, of course, the G.I. Joe villain, if you will. So I was excited, but I'd heard about the Energon Universe.
They redoing the Revolution, where G.I. Joe, Rom the Space Knight, Mask, Transformers were all in the same universe, and they built this giant universe of comics.
Don't think they're going that far.
It's just G.I. Joe and Transformers.
G.I. Joe and Transformers. Like I said, this is the first bit I've ever read in the Energon Universe. I just remember hearing a lot about when it was initially conceived and released. It seemed like I said in our chat, it was kind of like shadow drop. Like people didn't know what they were reading until all of a sudden there's a Transformer in this story. What the hell is going on here?
I had no idea. And honestly, when you asked me about were you shocked to see Megatron? I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I'm sure we'll get into the comic momentarily, but I didn't even notice it said Energon Universe on the book. When I go take my kids, I try to take them once a month or so to the bookstore. We've kind of shied off of it the last little bit because of Christmas coming up. About October, November, you just stop buying your kids anything because people have to buy your kids stuff. And there's less stuff to buy these days. So I stopped going to the bookstore as much. But when we go to the movies once a week, one of those trips to the movies, I usually take them to the bookstore. And I'll wander over to the comic book section. Specifically, I'm always looking at the independent bookshelf. Because like I've told you before, and you won't know it by this books we're going to review this year. And stuff on my shelf. But I'm a little bored with Marvel and DC proper, so I'm always looking at what are the independents. And I happen to see this Cobra Commander book. And it's like, well, let me take a flyer on this. I think he's a fun character. I like G.I. Joe. I haven't read a lot of G.I. Joe in years. The last time I read a G.I. Joe comic, besides anything for your show, was when I was a kid.
Yeah.
and I read the G.I. Joe proper comics.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just saw the Cobra Commander thing, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's a 5-issue limited series. There's one for Destro. I think there's one for Duke. They'd done 4. They were all kind of encapsulated in whatever trade you found them, and then that's it. Yes, they're part of a bigger universe, but you didn't have to read anything before or after to get the story, which is what I want. I want isolated stories. So that's why I grabbed that Cobra Commander book. So when you're like, oh, it's part of the Energon universe, and I saw Megatron there, and I'm like, I'm not surprised. I wasn't thinking about it. It was the most passive of passive.
I just pulled up the wiki for Energon Universe just to see. So it was June 2023 when it first started. Void Rivals was the name of the book, where a Transformer showed up and just seemed like out of nowhere because nobody was expecting that. I looked it up also. So it's G.I. Joe, Transformers, and Mask. Mask is the other one. I don't know if you remember Mask cartoon or the toys.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So
they had outfits and helmets, and then they had vehicles, and all that was attached to each other.
Yeah.
Somehow your mask related to the vehicle you were driving.
Skybound Entertainment was the imprint of Image Comics that published, or as part of the, giving us the Energon Universe here. So let me go ahead and we'll jump into our summary of what happens in this. Then I'll hit you with some questions here and some my thoughts on the book itself. So 5-issue Cobra Commander miniseries follows the character's rise from a disgraced Cobra-La operative to the ruthless architect of a new global threat. Cut loose from the ancient society that once controlled him, Cobra Commander pursues one objective above all else: securing Energon, the powerful alien resource reshaping the world. His search leads him into violent conflict with the Dreadnoks, who are holding a scientist captive to process raw Energon. Cobra Commander methodically wipes them out and takes out, at least, I don't know if he kills all of them, but he's definitely making them less of a threat than they actually are, seizing both the Energon supply and the scientist's research, and even weaponizes an Energon crystal in combat, proving he now wields power far beyond conventional means. That victory brings a final reckoning with his past when Nemesis Enforcer, his Cobra-La bodyguard, confronts him over his embrace of non-organic alien technology. Cobra Commander is formally excommunicated and marked as a traitor. Their clash ends with the commander killing the enforcer, supposedly, it looks like he blew a hole right through his chest, using supercharged alien weaponry, severing all ties to Cobra-La and redefining his vision of power. 6 months later, he has begun recruiting followers, established a hidden base in a quiet suburban town, and laid the groundwork for Cobra's rise. The trail of Energon also draws him into a tense rivalry with arms dealer Destro, while his growing influence pushes him toward an inevitable collision with Duke and G.I. Joe, setting the stage for the larger conflicts of the Energon universe. So, that is a 2-paragraph summary of what happens in Cobra Commander.
I was hoping that the scientist they had captured was going to be Dr. Mindbender. When does he take his shirt off and wear a cape?
He's the little monocle on.
Yeah. Can we just talk about that for a second? I had a bunch of G.I. Joe growing up as a kid, and that you had the Baroness, who had a tight leather outfit with the W's hanging out. You had the Blood, and Destro, and because this is the 80s, men are muscular, women are sexy as God intended. And so everybody has to be muscular. Some of them may have been wearing more clothing than others. Why they chose the scientist to be completely shirtless, I have no idea. He was like a pro wrestler. Dr. Mindbender should have been the champion of someone's indie toy fed.
It was Frank Gotch era. Like, that's what he reminds me of. Like the real classic wrestling. Baron Von Raschke or something. I don't know.
Walking to the ring with a cape. And leggings and with his monocle, like you said, bald, rippling chest.
Yeah.
I'm Dr. Mindbender.
Dr. Mindbender.
It was not Dr. Mindbender, and I was so disappointed. No stars for this comic.
Boo. I mean, overall, what were your thoughts going into this thing? After we're done reading.
Of the 3, this is my favorite one. Because it was a child's cartoon and it was written for children, even back, I'm talking like the first iteration of G.I. Joe. When I was a kid in the early 80s. Cobra Commander was kind of written as a dunce and an incompetent. And he was kind of like, first of all, the same voice actor, Cobra Commander and Starscream, and kind of plays him the same way. Where he's propped up by Destro, the Baroness. There were 1 or 2 other people that were relatively competent within Cobra. And then there was Major Blood, who was a coward and ran away at the first sign of danger. I don't remember how cowardly or brave Zartan was, but Zartan was the leader of the Dreadnoks. Every cartoon you were made to kind of laugh at Cobra Commander. That despite the fact that he led this giant technological terrorist organization, he could not accomplish much of anything. Not because G.I. Joe was superior, but because he was an incompetent boob. Destro was always seething.
Right.
Oh my God, we could just get this war out of the way. And if you'll remember when we reviewed the movie, G.I. Joe the movie, that's what they introduced Pythona, Nemesis Enforcer, and Globulus, played with the incredible Burgess Meredith. Even prior to that, the whole thing was, you have been leading Cobra to a fault. You are terrible. We're tired of this. We have wasted blood and money on your endeavors, and they have all come up short. And it's not always because G.I. Joe is superior. It's sometimes because you're an idiot and you make bad decisions. And so we're going to take the genetics of these like great leaders. Remember this?
Oh yeah, we're about to create Serpentor, correct?
Yeah. Before cloning was an actual thing. They took DNA of great leaders and military strategists and whatnot. They made Serpentor. This book doesn't portray him that way.
Exactly.
I loved the way they presented him here as kind of Superman's dad. He's kind of Jor-El. He's like, I reject our culture and our way of doing things as it limits our ability to master science. You have given me too many restrictions. There's this machine world that's out there and has this crazy energy resource. And if we had that energy resource, we'd be unstoppable. Why wouldn't we make use of it? Okay, so far I follow your logic. I'm with you.
Yeah.
And then he's in this, like, what amounts to essentially a theocracy. Like, no, we worship life.
It's all organic.
Yeah, we worship organic things, and you want to fuck with this machine. And he's just like, I reject this entirely. And so him and Globulus are at loggerheads, and theocrats doing what theocrats do is like he just excommunicates them. He's like, get the fuck out.
Yeah, he's secretly doing all this stuff, all these experiments, and,
right?
And they find out about it, and they're like, okay, well, as soon as they find out about it, I'm dead. So he pretty much gets.
They were going to kill him, and then he was like, what if you give me a chance? What if I just leave, but I bring back Energon?
Yeah,
and they're like, all right, you have like one chance with it. And they send Nemesis Enforcer with him, and like the rest of the book, he's not competent. He's a stone cold killer. He is single-minded in his pursuit of Energon. He's written extremely well. They don't really get into Destro too much in this book. It's mostly focused on Cobra Commander and Nemesis Enforcer. Destro comes in at the end. But I liked how the book ended. I liked he basically seeks out an arms dealer and be like, hey, you have technology I need. I have energy you're going to need to run your technology. What if we join forces? I'm excited to see, like, if I had the time and the energy to delve into this further, I would buy more of these Energon Universe books. I'm excited to see where this is going.
Yeah. My notes pretty much echo exactly what you're saying. We open this thing up. There's that truck stop scene where some guy insults Cobra Commander and then they find him dead. They don't show anything, but there's a lot of blood. Cobra Commander did something to this dude outside the truck stop. I was hoping that bodyguard was going to end up being Nemesis Enforcer. One of my favorite characters to come out of the movie and probably G.I. Joe.
So I said Dr. Mindbender should have been the champion of someone's toy league. What is it you said Nemesis Enforcer was your champion?
Yeah, he was the champion for the longest time. Like, he was almost unbeatable.
Nemesis was buff and he was the stuff.
Yeah, it was awesome to see him show up. I love we're starting things out in Cobra-La and actually making an origin that sort of makes sense for Cobra Commander. That really lent a lot to the story and made it feel like, okay, yes, this makes more sense.
That was the great thing about the cartoon movie that came out, because when G.I. Joe first started, it was an adaptation of something that had already existed. It was an adaptation of basically war toys. I think G.I. Joe was like a Barbie doll, essentially. It was in fatigues, and they just developed a lore about it. At first, they came up with a good enemy. It's a giant terrorist group with technologically superior weapons, and they are out for world domination. So they're not going to be able to handle this with just regular military alone. You have to create this giant fighting force of experts in every field you can think of, like putting out fires. There was a fireman.
There was a medic.
There was one or two medics. The G.I. Joe specialties towards the end got a little silly.
What did they ever?
I don't have the list in front of me, but there's a list of ridiculous G.I. Joe toys.
The Eco Warriors, I think is what they were called, like, or they were fighting pollution and stuff like that. That's when they stopped doing the 3 1/4 or 3 3/4. I can't remember how tall they are, but there's the figures that you're talking about. I remember the Astro Brigade, which is where they went to space, and all the figures were blocking the possibility.
Yeah, I'm sure if we Google it right now, like,
I mean, you got Shipwreck, who was your typical
Shipwreck is a classic Navy guy. The character was silly.
If you watched the TV show,
The initial run of G.I. Joe figures, it was like, we have a Ranger, we have a Marine, we have an Army guy, we have this, we have this, we have this. And then it's like, we have Shipwreck, he's from the Navy.
yes, to his dialogue from the cartoon, because I was watching the cartoon not too long ago. He sounds just like, oh my goodness, who's the guy from The Shining? Help me out here. Jack Nicholson. He is doing a Jack Nicholson impression. Hey guys, I mean, you just listen to it and you're like, that dude is trying to do Jack Nicholson.
Do you remember the Shipwreck freak out episode?
What does he do?
Oh my God. So if I remember correctly, I'm almost 50. In my shoddy memory. Some of these other guys in our friend group who have, like, still remember their childhoods can't remember to come to a podcast on time, but boy, can they remember that. There was an episode where basically Shipwreck's hallucinating the entire time.
Ooh, okay. That's starting to make me think. Or stickle on something.
Real children's cartoon. It was a really intense episode. Right. Messing with his memories and everything. It's a bizarre episode. So of all the G.I. Joe things besides the movie, that's the one that stands out to me. So it left an impact. I have no qualms with the art. I like the characterization of Cobra Commander. I liked how Cobra-La was presented. That's what I'm starting to get to. So when G.I. Joe and Cobra first started, it was a technological terrorist organization versus this, like, large army of military specialists. That was the whole setup of G.I. Joe. By the time the movie comes out, they had to introduce new toys. They were like, why does Cobra Commander wear a mask? Well, because he's a mutant. That's why. What if he was also, like, a mutant alien of some kind? Okay, well, where does he come from? Now, again, children's cartoon, so it's a little on the nose. So the terrorist organization is called Cobra. He comes from a place called Cobra-La.
Cobra-La.
I don't understand why they just didn't go with Cobra Evil Lair, but Cobra Bad Guy Dome, Cobra Evil Doerville. But yeah, he came from Cobra-La. Yeah. And then they had to, because they'd already upped the ante with Serpentor, they were like, well, who's above Serpentor? And they had to come up with Globulus. I was happy to see, like, as G.I. Joe has persisted for all of these decades, they've hung on to that bit, because they could have done anything, right? Or completely thrown out the movie and just started from scratch. And Cobra Commander is, I don't know, from Iraq or some shit. Or he's from another alien with not so goofy a name. He's from Uranus or something. Instead, they were like, nope, this was set in a movie once upon a time, and the 40-year-old, 50-year-old men will remember it, and that'll give them a joyful feeling in their hearts.
Yes, it will.
Cobra-La.
Yes, it will, because that is my first note, is Cobra-La. I'll run down my quick notes as I was reading this thing. I put Megatron in all caps because Megatron had been captured, and he apparently was armless or something like that, and that's how Cobra Commander found out about Energon. Megatron ends up escaping at some point. You don't see it in the comic, but when he shows up, it's like, holy crap, there's Megatron. So this is definitely steeped in some Transformers lore. Cobra Commander fighting the Gators. I thought that was going to be a big thing, like Cobra Commander versus Gators. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that barely happens. But when the Dreadnoks have him and they're torturing him, and I mean,
the Dreadnoks.
Yeah, I think where they're going with this, which is Cobra-La versus, I assume, what's going to end up being the Decepticons, or maybe just the Transformers in general. I don't know, but we're going to have some kind of like organic machine war of some sort, I would assume, because I think Cobra-La is planning on taking this war to space, which I love it. I'm here for it. I want to read how they're going to do this, because I think that this being my introduction to the Energon Universe, I was absolutely thrilled. It was a good book. I liked how they took the lore, stuff that I'm familiar with, and wrote a good story with it. And I kind of want to check out the other ones that were happening at the same time. You mentioned Destro. There's a Duke book, I think, that's happening as well. I did like the part where this is a world that did not have the lasers. The G.I. Joes in the cartoon always had the laser guns. And then the Energon is the actual reason, because I think when Destro shows up, and it's Destro and Cobra Commander going to do that meet, or this is after that 6-month break, he meets up with Destro, and one of his guys gets taken out with laser. Actually, I think Cobra Commander might take out his own guys. I can't remember. But regardless, he shows like, hey, and Destro's like, was that laser technology? And so it's cool that they're using Energon to give the reason behind why there is laser weaponry in that universe. So I like it. I'm a fan. Enjoyed the book as well. I had a good time. So anything else on Cobra Commander before we move on?
No.
Thanks for joining us. All of this would not be possible without W2Mnet.com, so make sure to seek them out for more podcasts. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please feel free to share, and we look forward to entertaining you again soon.